What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Surf and Sales podcast, coming to you live, not from Costa Rica yet. We'll be there in November. Check out surfandsales.com. I'm here at home in Austin, Texas, and my co-host and co-founder of the Surf and Sales Summit is at home in the Bay Area, California. What's up, Richard? How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm sitting out here looking at the new construction. You haven't seen the latest version, so I'll have to send you some pics, but it's good. And life is good, man. I closed a very significant Leese 5-figure deal this morning. Yes.
All right. I love that.
Yes.
Now you can pay for one new toilet seat. One new toilet seat in your house.
Exactly.
Like for those of you who don't know, Richard has been reconstructing his house for like 20 years. It's like a never-ending project. One thing.
Yeah, there's always one project after
another begins. Yeah. You're looking better, dude. Thank you. Your busted nose healed up. In fact, for sympathy, we decided to bring a guest on board that is also banged up a little bit and bandaged up. For anybody who's watching this episode on YouTube, we're here today with Lexy Franklin, who's the CEO and founder of Sidebar. What's up, man? Welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? Thanks so much for having me. All I want to do is talk about surf and sales, so I'm in the right spot.
You're in the right spot, and my only regret is we're not recording this on the beach right now.
I think it would be amazing, right? Just like a little sunscreen, ready to go. But I'm also really curious, Richard, how what the energy is like to build a house for 20 years. I mean, it must be amazing.
It's not okay. So it's fantastic because it's only been since 2019. What's happening is, are you married, Lexy?
No, I have a good partner.
Okay.
She's awesome.
Okay. So here's the deal. Like at some point, one of you will decide we need to do this. Yeah. And you create a project. So we redid part of the house. Okay. And then we had to stop and save some more money because we're not doing it on credit. And then we did the next part of the house. And now we're in the final part of the house. So
which part is it?
The final part is we redid the kitchen, and this is so exciting for the podcast, right? We redid the kitchen and family room and a new deck, and now we're going to move into the old living room and redo all that and attach it to the new deck, and we'll have an indoor-outdoor fireplace, and it'll be cool. I think we've overbuilt for the neighborhood for about 15 years.
The way this relates to startups and business and sales is that we often think once you're done building something, that's it. You're done.
Oh, yeah.
What Richard is seemingly forgetting is that as soon as he's done with this project, he's just going to have to start over because something that they fixed in 2019 is now outdated and has to be redone. Yeah.
I think for sure. My problem is that I don't know where the exit strategy is. Because this is our forever home, right? Exactly.
It's like SaaS. It's like SaaS markets right now. There is no exit strategy.
Yeah. It's like the exit strategy is my kids get it after I'm done, and I'm sure they'll sell it and be just fine.
Yeah, you kind of have two things, which is like launch is not the destination; it's just the beginning, and there is no exit strategy.
There is no exit strategy. We're all in purgatory right now.
Everyone's playing an infinite game here.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody, Lexy, about Sidebar and what you're up to, what it's all about, what you're building, and give people some context for why the heck you're here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I'm super energized. I think it all starts kind of for me with my mission. Like my mission in the world is I really want to be part of a team that makes a positive impact in 1 billion people's lives in my lifetime. Like I want to, and it doesn't need to be an impact that's written across the stars, right? It's just every day feeling a little bit more empowered, a little bit more confident, a little bit more seen, like a little bit more like the best version of yourself. And I think that I've wanted to kind of always make that kind of impact since I was really young. And that's what keeps me up at night. That's what I'm thinking about when I wake up early. That's what I'm thinking about when I'm surfing is just how do I get involved? How do I be part of something? How do I be part of a team that has that kind of impact where they're leaving the world just in a better, different spot than they found it? And I think that for us, that's so much of what embodies Sidebar. So Sidebar is a leadership program. Its focus is to accelerate your career. It's kind of where people go when they're the best at what they do. And they learn from this like small group of vetted peers. We built this whole platform for them to interact on. And then there's a curriculum that's personalized to them. And we think that's kind of the magic of this experience, is this like highly curated match group of peers. And one of the things, like when we think about why, is like there's just this tremendous opportunity to connect with peers that solve these practical problems that come up day to day in our jobs. So let's just think about this at a higher level for a sec. We spend 90,000 hours of our lives working, and I actually really like working. I think it's really engaging. I think it's really interesting, but 90,000 hours is a lot of time. It's like our vast majority of time we spend awake on the planet. I wish I could kind of surf for 90,000 hours because I'd be so good, but 90,000 hours is a lot. And when you think about all that time, it's like, where do you really go to? And this is one of those places that's so awesome that exists right now. That's why I'm happy to be on the podcast. But where do you go to get to talk about that, to get to learn about that, to get to work on the craft, to get to be like, wait, the way I'm trying to solve this problem is not the way I should be solving that problem. It's actually really hard to find those spaces. And that was really our insight with Sidebar, is that if we're able to create this space where the defining factor is these small peer groups with expert facilitators that kind of focus on outcomes versus networking. So it's less about just getting to know people and more about like, how do I apply this thing that I just learned tomorrow in order to get better at my job? You know, Richard and Scott, I imagine that people listen to the podcast and they take the thing and then they learn it and they apply it the next day and they see the impact. Like, that's what we believe in. Richard, you're muted.
Yes. If anybody's got the scoreboard up, this is time 132 that Richard has been reminded he is on mute. Good stuff. It's been a while.
Which is good. Yeah. So here's my question. What do you do when you get into, an asshole like Scott, who is an expert at everything, but doesn't think he needs more help?
Oh, that's an interesting question, but I'm going to yes and it. I think that what's really exciting is the way I think about, there's this really interesting thing that happens in our careers. When we're really early on in our career, there's actually a lot of people who are there to help. And the decisions we're trying to make aren't that, they're not that critical. Like, it's okay to be wrong. And there's a lot of opportunity to get a lot of feedback and a lot of advice. As we go further on in our career, a few different things happen. One, there's way less people to talk to about the type of problems we're trying to tackle. Two is that the decisions that, other people were making, people start to look to us to make. And three is they become less reversible. Like the impact of decisions are much higher and you want to make way less mistakes. And so what's happening is that as you become senior leaders in your career, there's less people to talk to. The decisions are way more complex and the risks for making the wrong decisions are a lot higher. In that sphere, it's always good to have peers. And I think what's really nice is that, in a group, Scott, there are things that that are kind of world-class and amazing that you're really good at. And there are other things that as human beings on the planet who work and spend all this time and want to be great at what we do encounter, where we just might not have that paid tuition or that learned experience. And that's why I think that a really good analogy for Sidebar is thinking about this like personal training versus a gym. There's a bunch of networks out there. There's a bunch of Slack communities. There's a bunch of different ways to interact that I think is really similar to a gym. And it's actually valuable, right? Sometimes it's just hard to distinguish the signal from the noise. But I think it's valuable in the sense the way a gym's valuable. I can come whenever I want. It's like gyms are awesome. I can use the equipment and it's totally on me to like chart my own path. The problem is that I haven't done a bunch of push-ups in a really long time. Like, that being on me is like a double-edged sword. I think the difference with having, a facilitator who knows your goals, having like personal training essentially, which is a lot closer to Sidebar, is that everyone knows what you're trying to achieve. There's accountability. There's like a social accountability aspect to everyone's kind of holding me to the goals I just shared with the group. And there's this way to measure progress in this really meaningful way for me to go achieve results. And so I think the focus is, to answer your question directly, Richard, is like, if you want to go get that goal, we just think that there's nothing like peers in the world to help you go get it faster.
So I got one more question, and Scott can ask some questions
and
try to insult me, which is, Scott, how jealous are you that he has monetized community in a way that you have always wanted to monetize community?
Oh, jealousy is the right word. I'm glad. actually.
Envious. I know you are. I know I'm giving you a hard time.
Yeah. No, I'm glad, because I'm going to screw this analogy up, and Lexy, correct me if you see it differently. But in my mind, it's like there's this platform community like Twitter and LinkedIn, massive platform. People love to call like a community, peers, place to get information, blah, blah, blah. Then we got all these Slack communities, right? Or WhatsApp communities. These are the micro communities. That's that kind of movement. And now Sidebar, in a way, is like an evolution of those things. And it is this like group classes, personalized group class kind of structure, where it's even smaller than micro communities. It's very peer-to-peer kind of focused, right? And so I think it's a natural kind of progression. And I love what they're building. I'm a huge proponent of it.
I mean, I really appreciate that. And one thing I'll just say that's really important is like, it's like the vetted aspect of it that really makes a large difference. Like, you know, we all know each other and are able to be like, you know, Richard, we just met, but I know that you're really great at what you do. And so because like, I know that I am able to be so much more authentic and open to ask you really hard, tricky questions that are legitimately blocking me, and to be really open and receptive to your feedback. I think what's really powerful about this next generation that you're talking about, Scott, is the vetted nature of it. You know, the fact that it's not, you know, you have to apply to get in. And so you're able to have these conversations with peers where the benefits are just extreme. You know, members can access these diverse insights who've been in similar situations, but it doesn't have the bias of me going to ask a manager who's like invested in one way, or me asking friends and family who maybe I'm just asking too many times about work. So like this unbiased vetted community is what we think is really important.
I have wrote down a bunch of notes while you were talking the last few minutes. One of the things that I wrote down that I think is really interesting is you said it's easier when something to the effect of it's easier when you're just getting started, right? So as you get older, one of the things that's harder that I've found, at least, is you lose peers. You don't have access to the same amount of peers. I mean, I can remember when I was 20 something years old, and you know, I'd get off work and it's like, hey, let's go to the bar and let's hang out and let's like talk about work and talk about other stuff. It's like, I ain't fucking doing that anymore at 46, almost 47 years old, right? I'm not going anywhere to socialize and network with my peers. I have life stuff going on. I've got kid stuff going on, right? And one of the things that you hear from people who move to a new town all the time, especially when they're older, is like, where do I meet people? How do I meet people? Right? This is like a natural progression. So it makes sense that more senior level people actually struggle with this sometimes and need a little bit of help here, right?
I think that's really, really well said. And I think it's also really natural. And on top of that, one of the things that's really interesting as you progress throughout your career is a lot more of the problems become cross-functional. They become multidimensional. You know, when I was really early in my career as a product person, a lot of the problems were product related. Like, how do I solve this product problem? But when you're running a company, or when you're, you know, a senior leader and you're managing all of these things, like the type of problems you're solving are interdisciplinary. They're complicated. They involve lots of different types of people. And so being able to get that diverse perspective is really valuable. So it's like, yeah, you know, one of the things I love, I moved to San Diego to start the company, and San Diego as a community has been so receptive and so welcoming. But there was that first year where like, I didn't know anybody except for my roommates. And I'm just like, who do I go meet and how do I figure this out? And, you know, I'm coming from the Bay Area where I had so many friends and so much like connection. And I felt that same way, Scott. And, you know, one of the beliefs we have is that if you're really lucky, you're able to find this on your own. You're just able to find the right group of people and the right system and the right pieces. But that happens for such a small fraction of people. That's like,
most people need help with that.
They need help. And why wait 15 years to kind of put all that stuff together? We could just get it right away.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to one of the very first things that you said, which was something to the effect of, you want to impact 1 billion people's lives.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm sitting here thinking, you know, normally when people make a huge, grandiose like statement like that, I think the immediate reaction for some people, and myself included, is like, wow, that's really fucking arrogant.
Yeah.
How is this dude going to impact like 1 billion people? Like this guy really believes that, right?
Yeah.
And I am way too big of a wuss to be like, I'm going to impact a billion people. I'm like, I don't even know if I can impact 5 people today, let alone a billion. So how do you land and get comfortable on setting such a like massive goal for yourself that very few people will ever get to? Because I am too much of a chicken to set that goal, and I would feel too lousy about myself if I wasn't progressing properly to get there. Where does that confidence come from, and how do you prevent the confidence from becoming arrogance?
Totally. Well, there's like, it's a really good question and I super appreciate it. And there's like a lot of subtleties in that. So let's maybe dive into it. One is that I think that there's a tremendous amount of power by trying to set out to do things in the world that you don't know how to do yet. Like I think that there is like this amazing combined with the, like, I'm a big believer in manifestation and kind of manifesting like what I want and who I want to be in the world. And it was described to me really well once, which is that when you're able to define really specifically what you want and what you want to go achieve, and in the current present moment, you don't have that yet, you're able to draw, like your brain basically is able to take the dissonance of that reality, the fact that there's this future that you really want to achieve in the present where you're not there yet, and kind of in every situation bring you subconsciously or consciously closer to that goal. And so I think one of the really powerful things for me is that I actually look at it in a completely different frame. And the frame I look at it is that I want to make the absolute most of my time alive on this planet. I feel so lucky to be alive and so lucky to be born and so lucky to be awake and be here. In order to do that, the way I want to contribute is I really want to impact people's lives in a positive way. And it doesn't have to be me. I want to be part of a team that does it. I want to be part of the energy of that. And I want that to feel like the type of problems and the type of questions, the type of challenges I'm wrestling with have the potential and the impact to not just impact a few people, which is also amazing. Like one of the really big things I believe is comparison is the thief of joy. Impacting 5 people is no less important and no less valuable than impacting 1 billion. They're both very worthwhile. For me, I am so focused on this. How do I think about things at the scale? How do I think about things at the impact? How do I think about things at the potential to build something that just feels like it's a fundamental part of what it means to be human, right? To think about that, like there's so many things in this life that I'm so lucky for. These unearned advantages. You know, I have an amazing family. Like my parents are awesome. I got to go to college. Like there's all these things that are so lucky. And instead of taking all of that and using it which way, which is totally a great answer. For me, I want to take all of that and make a really big difference in the world. And so I think that it comes from a place of, okay, if we combine all 3 of those together, it's every decision, every time I'm thinking, when I'm surfing, when I'm out, it's like, okay, like how would you solve that problem at scale? Like who would I need to partner with? Like how would I need to grow? What would I need to learn? Who would I need to become in order to become that person who could do that? And I think what's really powerful is that over the course of a lifetime, there's all of these opportunities, big and small, to help people around us. And so I'm always like on the lookout for that and trying to figure out that dissonance. And number 2 is that I think that I really care that my work on a day-to-day basis matters. Like, I just really care that what I can control is that it's geared and bent towards the light of making a positive difference in people's lives and a positive difference in the world. And that can mean just being present on a one-on-one conversation and being really here now. It can mean having the courage when these opportunities come up in life to be like, I guess I got to go jump in because the impact seems like it's over there. It could be mean having the fortitude to say no to stuff that doesn't really like energize me or get me excited. But like it's like, I guess, carrying all of those pieces together to be like, at the sum of this, at the sum of a life, I want to be someone who tried as hard as I could to make as big as difference as I can. And so I think it actually comes from a place of not arrogance at all, but just of mindfulness of there's this one precious life and I want to direct it and use it as much as possible and be around people who are so committed to making a difference. Like that's who I want to surround myself with.
Yeah, I would say, Scott, I think you sell yourself short in this regards too, is that, the way I interpret, what Lexi's talking about is the ripple effect.
I love that. Yeah.
Right. Like that's, it is the ripple effect that people like Lexy have, or some people could say you and I have, right? It's not the direct impact of millions of people. It's the indirect that goes from us to the next person, the next person, the next person, right?
The thing that he has in spades that you and I are not as good at,
positivity.
There is a pervasive gratitude.
Yes. Which is my question.
Everything that what he said. Go ahead.
So where did you get that, Lexy? Where did this, was there a significant moment in your life? Was it, this is just how my parents raised me? And like, I am lucky to have two parents. Like, where did this thoughtful, purposeful stuff come from, do you think, early on in your life?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And what I would say about, Richard, we're just getting to know each other, but Scott, what I would say about your impact, to Richard's point, just in the last 2 weeks, Scott, I've had multiple people who have, are in your orbit, who have specifically mentioned you in particular and how you've made a positive impact in their life. These are like two people like throughout like just the course of my day-to-day who highlighted you and your world and how you've changed their life in a positive way. And I think that if we look at that as kind of like, a small sample size of just me as one individual, having two people who specifically went out of their way to mention you, I think the impact you're both having is probably really, really big. And so I think that idea of kind of by being who you are, and sharing what you share and sharing your knowledge together, it's changing lives right now. So I want to double click on what Richard said to not undersell that. From a gratitude perspective, I think that I'm just like a very lucky person. Like, I think that there's definitely been lots
of. But were you like this as a kid? Like, cause look, we're all, look, as kids, we're all a little self-centered and selfish and those kind of things. And look, I'm Gen Xer. So it could be the way I was, a latchkey kid and had to figure shit out on my own and have deep-seated anger issues to my parents. So therefore I'm angry at anybody who has a certain sense of authority. And there's my 30 years of therapy in about 30 seconds. But
that's powerful.
Right now, what was it like? Like, is it,
I think I just was surrounded, my parents got divorced when I was really young. And so I think that had a pretty big impact on my life overall. But I was surrounded with a lot of people really early in my life who just cared about trying. Like, I just had a lot of role models who it's not about winning, and it's not necessarily about even being successful. But there was a lot of people who I was surrounded with who just tried really hard to be the best versions of whoever they were trying to be in the world in a lot of different situations and a lot of different scenarios. And so
how often do you surf, Lexy?
Oh, I try to surf all the time.
No, but twice a week, once a week, 3 times a week.
So well, I'm like been recovering from this guy,
right?
But once it's there, I pretty much surf all weekend. So Saturday, Sunday.
Scott, that's why he's so grateful.
That's right.
So like seriously though, if we go to Costa Rica and we come back and we're refreshed and we love it, and it's like we go out and solve problems on the waves. Where do we solve our biggest problems?
On the waves, right? In the water.
So
not at my desk, that's for sure.
That's for
I mean, but I think that's what's so powerful about this is that. So one of the really cool things about, I think what's so interesting is that this is the fundamental premise of Sidebar that excites me so much, is like everyone's sitting on genius all the time. It's just untapped. It's just like, it isn't the right mechanism to get it. And the structure of Sidebar just brings it out, right? There are things that, like what you just said, Richard is like 100 out of 10 idea. And Scott, you kind of like made a quick aside at it, but it's true, right? We spend the majority of times of our day at our desk, but our best ideas actually don't come at desks, right? They come surfing or they come in the waves. You know, when I moved to San Diego, I try and set a goal for myself every year. And my number one goal was like, what happens if I go in the water every day? Like what kind of person would I become if I just try to get in the water every day? And not only did I get way better at surfing, but I was just so much happier. I listened better. I was kinder. Like I was more creative. Like that fierce edge of wanting to be like Bob Dylan in the world. Like that vibe came back. And I was just like, wait, this person who I grew up on the beach. I grew up as, and like over time, I think it's really easy for us to get so polished and so crisp and so like in the day-to-day of life, which makes so much sense. But that wildness came back in a little bit of way. And I think that Richard, it's that wildness that you're talking about that we feel when we're in the sea and we're catching this wave that there's only one of that came halfway across the world in order to be here in this fleeting moment. It's like there's a lot of Zen in all of this. That's really interesting.
I think I was raised under the, work hard, hustle hard, 10, 11-hour days. So I grew up that way. So I didn't make that time earlier in my career. So therefore I was shifted and mindset shifted towards this other approach. Right. So, which is one of the things I love about younger generations is y'all live life, right? I have to fit life in. I think other people fit work in. And for me, that's a big difference.
What caused the shift for you?
Which shift? To work hard, hustle hard?
No, you just
the opposite.
Brilliant mentioned that was what
I would say I think once I got through my therapy and kind of realized what was going on and that I was burning myself out. And it's come in stages, right? And then the next stage came when I met Kathy and got married and went back to therapy because I was like, okay, world's going to change. I need to open myself up, right? Then when the boys came, went back, same thing, like, okay, how's my world going to change? What do I need to do to make time for it? I remember texting my therapist and saying, I can't imagine just sitting there watching my 2-year-old because I have to watch him and nothing to do. And she just laughed at me and she's like, you're going to miss that moment. Like when it's gone. And she's so right. Like there's nothing better than just sitting there playing blocks with your kids for 10 minutes when they can't really speak yet, but they're trying to build something. Right. So I've learned to find those moments in a different way. So I had to rewire my brain. So that's for me, those were the shifts. And much like you, and I think a lot of people, I had to be willing to go put myself out there to realize I was not happy in those ways. Therefore, I need to find this happiness, right? Like I was so bad at one point that, I used to live in San Francisco and I lived on one of the cool hip streets and stuff. And my therapist was like, why don't you just go for a walk for like 5 minutes down the street? Don't go buy anything. Like it's where all the stores are, it's the movie theater. And I was just like, I would just get out of the house and go walk just to be around people because I was such an introvert and so self-isolating. So those little things are the pieces that made me do that. And I still, I still struggle to do it, but at least I'm aware of it.
Well, we're flying and starting to run out of time. I'm going to ask one more question before we turn it over to you and you can ask us something. My question is, you got one bet for the rest of the year 2024, one bet for the second half of the year, let's call it, in terms of what your go-to-market approach is, what your channel is that you're going to focus on. Where do you place your bet on this go-to-market roulette table?
And just to clarify, are you thinking like in 2024 specifically, or
yes, for the rest of this year? For the rest of this year, not forever, ever, just for the rest of this year. For everybody listening, you got one bet. Everybody out there is trying to figure out how am I going to succeed in the second half of this year. What's the thing? Where are you placing your bet?
So I'm a big believer in doubling down on bright spots and then quadrupling down on bright spots and then like eightupling down on bright spots. And I think one of the things that
he's splitting two kings. He's playing blackjack. He's got like 8 hands.
I know. He's got like 4. Yeah.
He's like, I know you said roulette, but fuck roulette. We're playing blackjack.
We're just playing numbers. And I think for us, from a go-to-market standpoint, at the end of the day, like we honor our members the most, right? It's like, these are people who are so brilliant. They're just at the top of the field and they just want to get better. They just want to learn. They just want to grow. They want to go achieve their goals, which of course they're all going to accomplish. But the idea is that in Sidebar, they're going to get them faster and in a more structured way and with peer support. And I think for us, it's really, our best members come from other members. It's really kind of enabling current members who've experienced what Sidebar is, who understand the value, who are just make up this incredible community that we care about so much, really leaning into their recommendations on who to bring in next and building out that as a system. And so when I think about kind of a go-to-market and how to think about it, it's really, there's all of this advice that says build a product 100 people love. And then there's like a big gap. And then it's like, great, this is what it's like to have a really big company. And I think that for us, we're just trying to listen really deeply, be really humble, and keep working with our members at building it with them. And I think that, Scott, the answer to your question really succinctly is that I think members, like giving members what they need to recommend the best people in their networks who could potentially join Sidebar and might be a really good fit for us and what we believe in, is the best step forward in 2024. And so my advice would be is that I think sometimes it's really easy to look at a lot of data and be like, oh, this could work, or this could work, or this could work. And the lesson I keep learning time and time again, which is like somewhat surprising because it seems obvious, but I keep learning it, is kind of less is more and go to the bright spots. And that right now is our biggest bright spot.
Love that. Well, before we get out of here, we always at the end of every show say, how can we be helpful to you? Do you have any questions for us? So fire away. It's your turn.
Yeah, so I do have a question for both of you, which I'm actually like, it's kind of nuanced, but I think it's important. One of the things that I love so much is just getting better at my job. Like, it's just like learning. And I think one of the things, Richard, as you were talking, one of the things I really reflected on that I thought was so beautiful about your story is just how complex and a long life is, right? You go through so many iterations and so many different chapters, and you're talking about walking among people, and here you are leading so many people into better lives, right? Like the transformation is really powerful. I think at Sidebar, this is kind of what we believe, right? It's about getting better at your job. What is one thing that each of you has learned where you're like, whoa, that made me substantially better at what I do? Like that's like a really good tool in my toolbox, and I'm going to use this all the time. And I'm not the same now as I was. Like that skill was really valuable. I'd love to hear one thing that you've each learned recently where you're like, you'd chalk it up in that category, because I'd love to learn from both of you.
Define recently. Recently. You said
Scott's answer is that he became friends with me. So
yeah, but we know that date, that was December 30th, 2008.
Right.
So
that's right.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I guess like as example is just like, I would say in the last 6 months, like what's something where you feel like, wait, this unlocked me in this really powerful way. I got
a couple of them. So
one, I like how you both had them right away. Go ahead.
One was, I finally had to stop thinking I was as smart as I thought I was. And that's a long time ago. Because I was a complete, as I tell Kathy stories about me, even before I knew Scott, like I was a jerk. Like I was just, all that stuff. So I think that moment was a big piece. So I could be more open to learning, and I still struggle with that. I would say the most recent thing is Brave New Words by Salman Khan is a great book. He's the one who created Khan Academy.
Yeah.
And helping me understand as I'm building out my AI bot, I know Scott's got one too, is that the value of all these things, you can go to ChatGPT, but if you follow Scott or you follow Richard, people can get my content based on where they're trying to learn themselves, right? Like an AE who's just got their first job as an AE after getting promoted from SDR will probably have a different set of questions than someone who's been an AE for 5 years and trying to go after a complex enterprise sale, right? So the goal of which is a little bit like your community in the sense of, you can meet people where they're at based on their skill set. And so as part of, training and coaching, like that's the biggest problem. Like what's our problem with coaching and sales is that I got 8 reps. How am I going to spend enough time with each one of them other than one cold call shadowing a week? That's enough. One-on-one a week? No way. So how do I scale that? And we all know that my veteran rep doesn't need as much attention as my newer rep. So can I use that? So that book, and literally just sort of, I'd already started on my bot, but it really just opened my mind of like, oh, that's how this is going to work. Right. So.
Wow. Thank you. I'm going to get that book, Brave New Words.
It's really fun. It's good. It's a strong product pitch, by the way. It really is. But you can get through it, and because I can't tell you how many times he says Khan Academy in the thing. So
you could put that into the Richard bot, and it would probably tell you.
Yeah,
it's used this many times. Yeah.
So I once read a quote from him. He has this amazing quote about the stars, and look up at the stars. I don't know the exact quote, but to paraphrase it, when you look up at the stars, like think about all of the generations of people who are also been looking up at the same stars and realize that we're both so infinitesimally small and large in our lives at the same time. And I think about
that is his approach. If you read the book, he doesn't mention that in the book, but you can definitely see that. How does he affect 1 billion people? Right. Like in that mindset. So,
yeah.
Well, I have a much more practical, boring answer. I'll be the yin to Richard Zhang. The longer term thing is just learning how to write more. Wow. When Richard and I got into sales 20 something years ago for me, 30 years ago for him, no one was like, hey, you should be a good writer. Your journalism major and your English lit major is going to come in handy. This was like not a thing when I got started. No one cared about like, what you wrote in an email or on the cover letter of the fax when you were sending over a contract. Nobody fucking cared. Right.
Yeah, you're like,
along the way now.
Yeah,
exactly. But along the way, like Richard's written a book. I wrote a couple books. We've both been writing on LinkedIn for God knows how long. It's like writing literally changed the course of my career for sure.
Yeah.
So that's the longer term one. But you said specifically in the last 6 months. And so in the last 6 months, I've been learning all about like tax shelters, essentially.
Okay.
I have created multiple new entities and companies. I've anonymized myself as an owner of certain real estate holdings of mine. I've redone a massive like living trust, estates, will, all of these kinds of things. So none of these things have anything to do with my like real current present day business. They have to do with my sort of post sales SaaS kind of work and more of a retirement passive income, moving money around kind of thing, all in a very legal way, I should say.
But I'm gonna back on you, Scott, because I think this goes back to what Lexy was saying earlier, which is that this is cross-functional, right? Everything you've learned, I know you well enough to know that you will apply this to the way you think, the way you teach people, the way you coach people. So I think it's a sub, it's a sub level, right? It's an undertone to it.
I agree.
But but it's good. Like everybody needs to learn how to do that stuff, and nobody teaches us.
It's boring stuff. Nobody teaches us, and it seems overwhelming. It is overwhelming to me, at least.
Yeah.
So, but it's been worth it.
Scott, do you notice that, like, with all that stuff kind of structured in this way, like you kind of brought order to chaos, like you approach day to day differently? Like, did it create like a foundation for you to approach your day to day in a different way, or does it just kind of feel like a good check mark to have? Like, how has it impacted you?
It's impacted me in the sense of like, I've made a lot of bad decisions in the last God knows how many years that I didn't even know were bad decisions.
Tried to teach you.
That was dumb. Like, why didn't I do X, Y, Z? Oops. Not like catastrophic decisions, but just like certain things that you don't
financial
think
stuff.
Financial stuff. Like, you buy a rental property. I bought rental properties, and I never had a holding company that owned rental properties. It was just all in my name. Well, if something goes wrong at one of those properties, I'm on the hook, and I'm on the hook for everything that I own in totality. I never thought about that shit. Nobody ever told me that. Right?
That's not true. I understand. You refuse to listen.
Get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out of here.
If he says so, I get. Anyways, I don't know if it's like I think that I'm still in the throes of it, of organizing it all. Yeah. Right. So it's like it was this puzzle that somebody just dumped on my table, and there's 1,000 pieces in this puzzle. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to take forever. I don't even want to play this game. Most people look at it and say, I don't even want to play this game. I can't be.
Right.
And then I think I'm in the phase where I'm like, I'm organizing things, and I've got the edges, and everything's starting to kind of come into focus. And I think when I'm done, quote unquote, with this process, and the puzzle's complete, I think then I'd probably have a better answer for you right now. Right. Yeah. It's just making me think a little bit more strategically, maybe, is the closest application of day to day. Yeah.
It's really exciting to have the edges. I feel like once the edges, you have the edges, you're kind of, you round up.
you're on your way.
You're on your way. I don't know that you ever get that final piece of the puzzle, though, in this regards, right? Like,
this might be an unsolvable.
But you do need it. Right. It is something you need to do for people who aren't listening. Listen to what Scott says and start to have those conversations. Ask people, ask someone smarter than you. Ask, don't
ask me. Just don't ask me yet.
No, I would ask you.
I'm not ready.
But I don't know. I mean, I think you're further along the road than 99% of people.
Anybody else who's never done it, you're way further.
Okay, but just don't expect me to Sherpa you all the way through. How about that? Lexy, tell everybody where they can find you and where to go check out Sidebar and get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Please check out Sidebar at sidebar.com. We'd love for everyone to apply to it. You can always just message me on LinkedIn. I'm just Lexy, Lexy Franklin on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk with everyone. And I just want to thank you both. Like, I knew when I showed up today, I was lucky to be in the room, but this is like a highlight of the week. You're both so brilliant, and it was an honor for me to learn from both of you.
A lot of fun, man. Appreciate your energy and you sharing everything, and good luck to you and the team over at Sidebar. And we will see everybody next time on the next episode of the Surf and Sales Podcast.
And Lexy, the next time we do this, you'll be with us on a surfboard in Costa Rica.
We got to go on the surfboard. We got to do it on the beach.
So
on the beach in Costa Rica.
Yeah. Thanks, Lexy.
Okay. All right. Thank you.